Koto. I'm really pleased to see you because I thought the other group sounded really good. Like they have flash PowerPoints with beautiful photos and really exciting tools. And I thought, oh yeah, talk about the treaty, eh? Woohoo! always a favorite, always so challenging and favorite. But I'm really delighted to have you here with me this morning and to have a conversation rather than a lecture, because I've done a lot of lecturing this week, and it's just trying to stop that habit, really. So I'm hoping that you'll all interrupt me with any questions and comments if I start to sound like I'm a teacher. You're going to try to stop me from doing that. So I'd just like to open our session this morning. For me, though, I can't help but use every opportunity to make a few points about Te Tiriti and for us as groups. So starting right from the beginning, I don't do karakia unless tangata whenua asks me to. I do something else, because I think what we really risk is appropriating stuff that we don't understand, which is not the case this morning, but it can be the case. When I looked up the links to karakia on the EHA network, it was all the Te Puni Kōkiri links, and they're very standardized, and they don't really relate to people unless you are Māori. I really urge you to think about your culture and what you bring to the table. So I'm just going to open with a from someone else's culture, but they're a Pākehā and a Tongan poet, the wonderful Carlo Mila, who wrote a poetry book called God is Muscle, and her poem, which is about which is called Matariki, A Call to Kāinga. And I'm not going to read it all because it's too long. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of this to set the scene for today. Matariki, time to honour different ways of seeing the same night sky, different ways of being human and being alive. Let lost languages give us ears so we may hear, eyes so we may see, heart so we can translate the thudding rhythm of the co-created, that which feeds us, breathes us, the substance under our feet, fresh water that flows in our veins, in our air, in our lungs, stardust in our bones. Let us call on our family of relatives to help us heal. Bright light of the stars, fierce power of the tides, enduring knowing of the stones, cleansing of water that can still heal everything it touches. Let us not just build meeting houses, let us be meeting houses. Let our bodies house the meeting that needs to happen, or we are out of time. Kia ora. Thank you, Carlo. Good everybody. So let's just do a little bit of get to know each other stuff. So I'll start. I'd just love to hear who you are, where you are, what brought you to this particular session, so that maybe if you've got something in particular on your mind that I can help you, we can have a korero about that. So I'm Catherine Delahunty. I'm a Pākehā. I am descended from English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and India. Some of my ancestors were colonizers. Most of them were colonizers. Some of them were colonized, the Irish and the Indian person, but most of them were colonizers. So I live in the land that where my great-great-great-grandmother is buried here. She came out here from Ireland in the Hauraki, but I was born in Wellington. I've spent my entire life in political activism and environmental challenge, and I'm a grandmother of 68, so hey, it's not over. I've got at least another 20 years of this work in me. But I'm really at the stage of life where supporting and mentoring the inspiring next generation is important to me, because I have great hope in young people. I'm working in I work in a lot of groups. So I'm on the board of Greenpeace. This is my last week actually on the board of Greenpeace. I've been working on Te Tiriti for Greenpeace. I'm the spokesperson for Free West Papua. If anyone knows where West Papua is and what their huge justice and environmental challenges are in dealing with being colonized right now. I'm also the chair of Coromandel Watchdog of Hauraki, where we're about to go to court after this organization is 40 years old, and we're about to go to court again to stop one of the hugest, to try and stop OceanaGold from destroying the whenua. I'm also, I'm sure all of you are like this, but I'm a bit in too many groups. I'm also an educator with Kotari Trust Education for Social Change, and I'm the chair of the Basket, which is what brings me here today. The Basket being the topic of I'll talk about it more, but I'm just interested to know where you are, what land you're standing on, and and what your role is. So can I jump to Eco Matters Zoom? We'll sort of go across. Kia ora.
Sorry
That's
guys.
all right.
Kia ora,
It's a nice
Catherine.
name. There's nothing wrong with being called Eco Matters.
I feel like I've changed it a million times, but every time you jump into a new Zoom, you have to change it again.
Oh,
so
yeah, well, I forgot.
My apologies, everybody. My name is Carla, and the land that I am standing on today is Tamaki Makaurau. I'm born here, but this is not my ancestral land. My father is actually from Nuhaka, a tiny little place.
Oh, yes. I know it. I know it.
Wairoa, yeah,
Hey,
Wairoa. And
awesome.
sort of, I guess, a parcel of land between Wairoa and actually the Mahia Peninsula is where my marae is, my ancestral marae. And I have a Pākehā mother who is from Australia. I'm also very interested in Australian Indigenous rights as well, actually, as a result of that. Although my mother is Pākehā, and her family are actually originally from the Isle of Skye. But yeah, my mum actually brought up in an orphanage in Australia, so pretty tough from Catholic nuns, so pretty tough upbringing. She came to New Zealand for a holiday when she finished her nursing degree when she was 18, met my dad and never went back. I'm one of four, but I do want to just take a moment to say that one of the things that I've certainly been learning on my journey with my heritage is that my father's family were very much taught assimilation, and his parents took that on board as the easiest way to actually deal with the conflict that was actually going on. So despite the fact that my father attended Nuhaka Native Primary School, he was not allowed to speak Māori in class and caned for doing so. And my dad is actually one of 12 children and lived in really significant poverty. The day they turned 15, they got 2 pence, and that was it. Out the door, off you go. Go to Wellington or go to Christchurch or go to Auckland and go and find yourself an apprenticeship. Go and do something, but you can't stay here, because there were so many other little ones coming up. So that's just the way that it was. They lived in a really small little 3-bedroom house. So for me, what that has meant is that my entire life I've grown up very Pākehā, and a very Pākehā version of, of this world. My dad is absolutely, has always been really, really keen on education and felt that was hugely important, but not in terms of teaching us about our culture or our past or our history. So I very much feel like I'm a product of that assimilation, and only now am I on the journey to actually learn about my history. And I do just want to say, that's not to say that I've never not been proud of the fact that I'm Māori, because I definitely am. But I just don't know enough about it. So I feel like that Pākehā person that kind of looks Māori that doesn't fit in either place.
Kia ora. O tēnā koe Carla mō tō whakaro. Your story is the story of many people assaulted by colonisation. And I know Nuhaka. I lived in Tairāwhiti for 13 years, and I was on the foreshore in seabed hiko, and we stayed at your marae.
Yes.
At Nuhaka. So I just want to acknowledge you and acknowledge that everything that I'm going to say in this conversation comes from trying to respect what it is that was taken from you and your family, starting with being beaten at school for speaking te reo. Yeah. And that we cannot imagine those of us who've not we have never been beaten for speaking that language. I just cannot get past what the children, and I have a friend from Nuhaka who had the same experience. And we should not get past it. We need to start with there. And I'm very grateful to hear your story. Thank you very much. And, maximum respect. Kia ora, Sandra, would you like to go next?
Sure. Kia ora, everyone. I'm not sure where to begin, actually. My mum is Kiwi, and I have little pockets of knowing that heritage, so quite strongly Celtic heritage from Cornwall. Earliest generations here came out in the 1860s to have a better life than working in the mines. She was a very resourceful and resilient woman, they were not landowners, but they definitely knew how to work the political game. And became involved, generations down the track in women's suffrage. So, strong, resourceful women in my history. My dad is Australian, and actually I grew up in Papua New Guinea, so that was Australian territory then. And the reason that I say that for two reasons. One is that between that context of my mother's history here and my dad's in Australia and then PNG, my growing up context was very much from the white colonizing side, certainly in terms of holding a superior position or the position of, superior knowledge or whatever that context is, which is enormously offensive, really.
Yeah.
But that's my context growing up. Having said that, I was born in a country that I can't belong to, and so always in the context of, moving here and knowing that sense of displacement, and taking a long time to find a place to stand, actually. So I think what interests me in this conversation in particular is the tension in that line of allyship, of embracing and assimilating or appropriating.
100%. Yeah.
And I don't think it's it's a very Pākehā thing to think you want to find the answer and the solution to that, and then you're going to be right. But it's a never-ending tension, I think. So just here to walk in that place.
Yeah, you've really named it, and it's really, really helpful. And thank you for your story as well. If we did nothing else in the session but actually get to know each other at a bit deeper level, I'd be perfectly happy, because this is the time we need to take in this country to build better relationships, to understand each other. So ngā mihi. Janet, you're next, since we're in the kaipātaki space.
Ngā mihi kia koutou, and Catherine, it is wonderful to spend some time with you in the space where you have so much experience and insight, and thank you so much. I'm very excited that the Basket has come to join our EHA whānau. I think we're going to have lots of fun, lots of learning, lots of challenges, and bring it on. So where I am standing today, I'm at a standing desk, so I'm actually
standing
is in the beautiful Tahinga Bethels, the Waitakere River Valley. So this is the rohe of Te Maki, and there is a strong relationship between our community and our iwi here, and there've been traumatic times, but there've also been opportunities for us to support them through court and their settlement, and now post-settlement there is land that is tagged for future marae to restore their papakainga where they were here, and that's very exciting. And so some similar stories for our whānau. So my mother's side, she was born in Poland, and her ancestors were from Ukraine and Germany and Russia, and they were Jews, and they had to move to escape pogroms from various different authoritarian, Tsarist and so on regimes, and so ended up seeing the writing on the wall before World War II, managed to get out and came to Southern Hemisphere, first of all Australia, and all of the family that I still have on her side of the family live in Melbourne, apart from one in England and one in Canada. So there's not many of them still around, and we're still finding out stories about where they lived and where they escaped to. And so from that side of the family, we're strongly activist family, I think partly because of circumstance. We too lost languages and couldn't practice culture and couldn't stay in place. And so there's some insights from that history and ancestry. And it's quite exciting. My sister's embraced going to Shul in Wellington and learning about Jewish history. And I recently did a Judaism 101 program online, thanks to COVID, where there's a silver lining from an Australian rabbi. And there's quite a lot of passion, and there's a tikkun olam calling for Jews to be the light of the world, to be involved in social justice. And our families really embraced that. On my father's side, I'm fifth generation in Aotearoa, and first they came from the Shetlands in Scotland, so Celtic history as well, not the lairds of the land at all, and came out to a part of the country that was similar in climate and practice, which was a central South Island on the Clutha River. So very much about working a hard land. And I'm aware that whatever land they came to then was someone else's, and there wasn't a connection there. They slowly moved north, came to live in Ohura and the central Waikato, and my grandfather was given land because he'd been fighting overseas, and but who was he given that land from? And so there's stories there that we're unlocking and finding, and then came to Tamaki Makaurau. So where we live now, we embrace. I was born and bred in Te Paki Pai whenua, which is the North Shore of Auckland, and near the Kaipatiki awa. And so that's really wonderful to be able to work, create connections. In Tamaki Makaurau, we have 16 to 19 iwi and hapu who have interests across the rohe. And so in our work in Kaipatiki, I'm passionate about deconstructing, decolonising the work that we do. We work with 12 iwi and hapu, and some of our work is deepening the relationships, working out what a fit for purpose relationship is. So kia ora, and great to see you all today.
Kia ora, thank you so much, Janet. It's just I feel it's quite moving to hear that your home where you grew up working on your next to the awa, but also all of the things that you're still discovering about who you are, because this is a lifelong thing. And I know you've also been a real leader in that passion for a building right relationship with tangata whenua. So thank you for your mahi over many years. I'd like to jump to Heidi. Heidi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sorry, my house is very cold at the moment, so I was using a blanket to wrap myself up in.
Yeah, go for it.
Kia ora. My name is Heidi. I actually come from America, from California. I married a Kiwi Pakeha, and really had an understanding of New Zealand from a Pakeha perspective from his family. That's because that's who I knew. And we came over here for 2 years to have some relationships with his parents, and I ended up falling in love with New Zealand and decided to stay on, and ended up going to further my degree through an ECE degree, which was my first sort of real experience with the Maori culture and the whole history of New Zealand through a Maori perspective. And it was really quite eye-opening. And I've gotten a little bit of, I don't want to say flack or you shouldn't be, anyway,
Resistance, a little bit of resistance.
I'll leave that conversation for another one, another time. It's just been, you know, I come in as a foreigner and I'm getting a perspective, and the family has their perspective, and there's been a little bit of a, oh, well, you're a foreigner, you don't have all the back history, and that is very true. I don't, but it's just.
But neither did I.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a lot easier to come in as a foreigner and say, oh, this is what's right, and it's you know, I still don't have the whole back history of everything, and I don't understand it all, which is the reason why I'm here. But anyway, from there, I was able to get a position with Kids Greening Popol, where we are interested in educating the children about environmental aspects. And part of that is about understanding which types of plants are surrounding them. And through that, I have actually opened up a whole nother can of worms about New Zealand history from a Pakeha and a Maori perspective, about how even the plants around us contain a whole bunch of history and a whole bunch of insight to where New Zealand is based, and their history in that. And that's just been really interesting to me as a foreigner to come in and learn about that. And so that's the reason I've chosen this breakout room, is to continue that on and learn more about that.
Great. Thank you so much, Heidi. I suspect you should, if you haven't already seen it, read the Tohunga Suppression Act 1906, because it's all about plants, and it's also all about, it's actually about tohunga becoming illegal, but those tohunga of the rongoa, of the healing plants of this country, they were arrested for their knowledge. So yeah, that just is, it is very, you're on the right path. Awesome. And I know it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. And I can just
tell me the name of that again.
It's called the Tohunga Suppression Act. So it's tohunga. The tohunga are those that hold the knowledge, and the Suppression Act 1906 was one of the acts that was used to stop Māori practicing Māori medicine. And it also did a lot of other bad things. But in that process, it affected people's relationship with the deep knowledge of rongoa, or the plants. Okay, awesome. Fantastic. And Jess has just put it up because she's Superwoman.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's speak to you, Daniel.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. So I'm a 4th generation New Zealander, and I was my ancestors called Awhatu Coast home when they first arrived. Although that said, I call many places home in terms of I was born in Thames, actually, and spent many years in Paeroa before moving to South Auckland, and then overseas and Waikato studies, and now call West Auckland Titirangi home. But our mahi at Beautification Trust is in the south of Auckland. So yeah, in terms of I think where I'm at with my journey is I certainly feel like my understanding of privilege has grown a lot over the years, in terms of knowing that I come from a place of a lot of privilege, in terms of my so many things, in terms of just who I am and upbringing and that sort of thing, and just understanding that that does mean different things and different ways of viewing things, and jumping to conclusions and that sort of thing too. So very, very conscious of that, and very much wanting to connect into understanding more around doing the right thing, in terms of South Auckland is just so diverse in terms of different cultures, beliefs, and just really wanting to see us as an organisation do the right thing in terms of
there's no one
not coming in and thinking we know everything and this is the way to do it, but really have that deeper level of engagement and working with and supporting, and that even came through with our new strapline is now all about connecting and empowering community, you know, because we don't know all this answers, and we really want to learn and support and empower as much as we can in that journey with others in our community.
Oh, kia ora, thank you, Daniel. And I'm sure that there's an interesting whakapapa behind the word beautification. It's, you know, it immediately suggests to me something from the 19th century, which it may not be, but it's just an interesting concept when you're in a colonized country, you know, who's beautifying who here. But this is why I love your reflection, your self-reflection, because that's what makes us learn and changes, when we're really willing to reflect on our own privilege. And that's what you articulated very, very coherently. Thank you very much. We're just going to go to Robin. Are you there, Robin? Because I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Yeah. I mean, basically, people, it is now 3 minutes past 10. And I'm really happy, because if you're going to grow relationships and organizations, this is the work you need to do first. Okay? Whakawhanaungatanga, Māori do that for a reason. And the reason is, now that I know some of your story, I can connect to you and we can work more effectively together in terms of relationships and in terms of this kaupapa. So let's just hear from Robin, Jess and Livni. And yeah, keep it tight, but say what you need to say. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yes, I'm Robin. I'm from, well, Heidi is one of my co-workers. Hi, Heidi. Heidi's with the kids, and I work with the community. I'm greening topol and yeah, get the local community engaged with planting within the urban topol area. So I'm in topol. I've been mostly in the Turangi. I was raised in the Turangi area, and then went out to travelled in university and come back to the Topol region. I really love it here, so just really want to connect with nature, and this is a new network for me, so I'm just really keen to learn and absorb all these amazing stories from everyone. So thanks for telling me to make it nice and tight, because that's me.
You did good. You did good. It's not really fair, but it's just that time flies. So thank you so much, Robin. I wonder, Livni, can you just give us a little intro?
Yes, I can. Sorry for my late and unmute. I was switching and this one didn't auto unmute. So I'm Livni. I'm from Waiheke Resources Trust, so we're based on Waiheke Island. I'm originally from Israel, but I've been living on the island for the last 3.5 years, in New Zealand for most of my life, and I'm in charge of the funding, internship program and general office things at the centre. So I do a variety of bits and bobs, and I'm full-time, so I've been really enjoying kind of hearing the rest of the sessions, and I'm glad I could make it to this one.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, Livni, from the beautiful Ngāti Pawa Rohe, and we'll jump to Jess as the last but not least.
Kia ora. I'll try to keep it short. So I've been in New Zealand since 2011, 4.5 years in Whitianga before I came to Rotorua, where I am. Yeah. You're good friends with my New Zealand mum, Anna Horn.
Oh yes, I am.
In terms of whakapapa, it's actually something I struggle with, because I always say Scottish, English, Irish, but that's all I know to my great grandparents, and I don't know in detail an awful lot behind that. My dad has looked up history, but I do really struggle with, when you're going back the way that you traditionally do, you go down the male lines, and so I find that Pākehā way of finding your ancestors, I don't feel represented by it. And then on my mum's side, she's got a very unique maiden name, which I won't say because it's internet security details. So with her name, we think that in the past that family has been slave traders. That's what we can find from that. And so again, I don't feel like my ancestors represent me, but and I feel that guilt of wherever I've come from in this life, it's been from that, there's a clear link to stepping on other people to get where I am. And so now, now that we have all this discussion about whakapapa, I find it difficult because I don't, there's not that mana attached to it, I feel, in my life that you get from like mana whenua, and so I just like listening rather than
understand.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Jess. Thank you everybody for whatever you shared and whatever you wanted to share. And I have a couple of reflections. The value of this is that if we're going to work effectively in the networks that we're part of, we do need to understand who we are and who each other is at a more deep level. We do need to acknowledge that those of us who are Pākehā, so New Zealander is a nationality and Pākehā is an ethnicity alongside Māori as an ethnicity, or Spanish, or whatever your ethnicities are, and they're usually multiple. But it's actually different if you are in Aotearoa, no matter how uncomfortable or displaced or uncertain some of us might feel. It's nothing to like how it is for tangata whenua in their own whenua. So we heard that from Carla, and in a very nice way. It's actually nothing. And it's very easy to sort of white center our own confusion about our identity and forget what it's like to actually have to live through being colonized and be in that place. Many of you have stories in your ancestry that give you an empathy, but it's not the same. And it's also very, very easy to, in the environment movement, and to work in the bubble of we're doing great things for the whenua, we love nature, but actually I didn't hear, and not so much in this session now, but a couple of people on this in this week, people who actually are doing great projects, but they never mention any connection with tangata whenua. Never mention it. It's like we're really comfortable in our white environmental bubble. And I actually, Janet has been working for years, as have I, and trying to actually point out that you can't make change for the whenua without recognizing the people whose very identity. See, the word whakapapa is not a word I use for my own history, because I don't have whakapapa, because whakapapa means to connect back to papa tuanuku. It doesn't mean what's your ancestors. I'm not going to pretend that I whakapapa back to papa tuanuku, but it doesn't help. What I need to do is own my ancestry. And actually, a culture that's entirely based, not partially, but entirely based on whakapapa, has then had 96% of its whenua taken from it, creates a very different form of identity confusion. And I just really want to acknowledge that, acknowledge you, Carla, because it's actually different. And therefore, and there's different work to do depending on the nature of our identity. All of us has to go through that journey of who's my family, where am I from, we've all got, like, I feel, Jess, we've all got the good people in our whakapapa, or the identity, we've all got the people who've done bad things. Like, my grandfather wore an ornamental sword all the time, so that he could beat up people in India. Like, it isn't glamorous, but at the same time, my grandmother raised 12, 8 children and a very difficult, so that we've all got, we can try and pick and choose. And we do that naturally to try and understand who we are and how to be the best person we are. But it's different for us than for people who have either been able to go back to their relationship with papa tuanuku, or have had that broken in this place. People have had it broken in different places, but in this place. So when we started the basket, we spent a lot of time having these conversations. Like, our first meetings were just talking about, not how we're going to organize the environmental movement in our area, who clearly could do with more networking, which is what we're trying to do. But who are we? Whose land are we on? What relationships do we need to try to work for? And what do we bring to the conversation? And so our commitment, it means that we may never get to be a very big group, because not that many people are really that committed to this. Like, a lot of people just want to get on. One person left our group because he said, look, I don't want to ask myself those questions. I want to just get on and grow trees. But the problem with that is, he did get on to grow trees, and he tried to do the right thing by growing trees in town, and in an area where very impoverished tangata whenua live, and he couldn't understand why they didn't want to look after the trees or be part of his thing, because he had no relationships. You can't do it without relationships. The trees won't thrive. The people won't thrive if the connections are not built. And I mean, we can spend our energy making sure that white people have a great life in this country. We can do that, and that they're all terribly sustainable. But actually, that is actually not a position of honor as committed to in Te Tiriti or Waitangi. So what we're doing in the basket, and we don't have all the answers, and we don't know what we're doing, and we're just trying, and we're not experts at how to be a good ally, because it's not easy to work out. What does being an ally mean? You know, it's kind of a complex identity, and it's actually a practice, not an identity. So it's about our practice. That's where you test what you do, not what you say you do or who you say you are, but what's your practice. So we're working on a practice that involves a lot of this reflection that you were talking about, you know, Daniel, about who we are collectively. Pākehās find it difficult to be collective. We were much better at talking about how we feel as individuals, but actually our challenge is to respond collectively to a culture that is based on collective. Otherwise, how the hell can they work with us? If it's all me, 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 well, it's really difficult. So we've got a big challenge to work on that, you know, to try and learn to be Pākehā collective, as well as open and respectful of tangata whenua and other cultures. So what do we do in the basket around this is, I think the first word that I thought of last night, because I made this up last night, because I'm kind of busy, was clarity. You know, like, yeah, I'm busy and experienced, and I am really aware that often it's really good to hear other people's voices, which is why I really enjoyed hearing all your stories and what you do. But clarity about where we stand. You know, if you can think that Waiheke Island, it's not Waiheke Island urban suburb, it's Ngāti Pawa. It's not, it's Tūwharetoa where Robin and Heidi work. They live inside Tūwharetoa. You know, as Janet said, they've got the 12 iwi of Tamaki, and they're connected to those 12 iwi, or they're trying to be, or work at. And the same with the south, with I mean, Daniel, Awhitu, that area, the whole southern Auckland, Ngāti Tiata, Ngāti Tamaoho. There are a vibrant, amazing iwi all across these, and hapu, all across the places where you're working, who are trying to restore kaitiakitanga. And they don't want you to be claiming that. They don't want to be, and that's what we're aware in Hauraki. I've been given very specific instructions to the basket. We would like you to work with the environment groups in our area to prepare them for this relationship. Because some of the settlements are sort of not even gone through, but the iwi and hapu in my area, not only they're not getting much land back. If you study settlements, you know they're buying it back at market rates. Did you know that's what tangata whenua have to do in the treaty settlements? They buy it back at market rates. So that really limits how much they can get. You know it, Janet, because you're, you know, like when you go to settlement processes, I went to a settlement in the Tairāwhiti when I lived there, and that was the only Pākehā in the room, because Pākehās don't pay attention. We're not paying attention to this. So like trying to pay attention to the settlements, and we can read them all online. Every one of you in your area, there will be settlements you can just read with a good summary, and you can just read it, and then you'll see that they're buying it back at market rates. So that limits what they can do. But what they want from us, at least in Hauraki, is get ready for right relationship. Get your people prepared in the environment movement. So I'm working with, on behalf of the basket, we had a workshop this week with predator-free Hauraki, with the Moiho Environment Group, and I worked with the Moiho Environment Group, lovely people, and I said to them, who's buried on that sacred mountain that you walk on every day? And only one person in the group even knew the name of the person buried on the mountain. Tamata Kapua, navigator of the Te Arawa Waka. And so the basic information, I don't, you know, for me, we just need to learn how, one, we don't have to be reo speakers. We have to be justice fighters around these issues. And that means, yes, learn to pronounce te reo correctly, because that's a starting point. But the most important thing is whose land you're standing on. So this is what we've been trying to learn about in our work in the basket. And now they've asked us to do this, Mahi. I'm very honoured to try and do it, and to try to be accountable to tangata whenua. So that's the sort of, how do you do that? And as Janet knows, there's no blueprint. There's no like somebody else, I think it was Sandra said, we just kind of want this thing to say, this is the right way to do it. But it isn't. It's about together helping each other reflect, helping each other go, oh, okay, we tried that. Did that seem to work? But, you know, maybe we need to listen deeper and listen harder to figure out what it is we need to do. And maybe environment groups need to do, and this is one of the things we've been trying to do, don't just go to events that are going to benefit your kaupapa. So, for example, Ngāti Hako are standing up against waste management at the Tirahia village on their sacred mountain. And so we went to court, and Helena, who's a 17-year-old member of the Basket, who runs our decolonisation reading group at 17, so you can see why I'm hopeful, you know, and she's in the climate film, you know, the film High Tide, Don't Hide. She's one of the great leaders in the climate film. So this 17-year-old started our, after our treaty workshops we did with our community, started our reading group. And she made chocolate chip cookies. And that was the best thing that we gave to that court case. We weren't there to speak. We weren't there to do anything, but man, that Helena can make chocolate chip cookies. And I know it counted because they put it on the Ngāti Hako website. They're like, hey, this park has put along chocolate chip cookies, and it was Helena from Thames, and it's awesome. So, you know, that's how relationship often is through food. And I certainly get that with biscuits, you know, that'll build my connection. So that's the sort of way in which we just go and support their thing. We went out with Ngāti Tamatara. They invited us they wanted people to help plant. So we planted 5,000 harakeke, but that wasn't what the day was about. It was about building relationships, and that's what led to the invitation for us to teach Te Tiriti. So it's actually about participating in their world on their terms, and it not being about your agenda. And that's quite hard for us. We're always like, oh, but you know, we've got so much to do, and you know, maybe they could help us do this, or why don't they want to join that? Or, you know, when I listened to the story about the Taranaki, I didn't hear a word about Parihaka. Parihaka is the center of food growing and organic gardening. It's a vibrant, incredible place. Probably they don't want to be on a tour because they've got a lot on, but that, you know, we need to really acknowledge the real leaders on these things in our community, not just the ones that we feel comfortable with. So that's a challenge. Just looking at the time. So for clarity about who we are, where we stand, solidarity action, that's what I've just described. Practical instruction. So when they tell us what they need us to do, we do it. I was lucky. I had a kuia. Auntie Betty Williams from Manaia told me what to do, and I did it. Once I was in a meeting with a whole lot of people who we've been fighting mining for 40 years. So this is a while ago. And Guy Salmon, who's like a well-known national environmentalist, eco, whatever, he came to the meeting and suggested that we turn the peninsula into some kind of park. And he didn't seem to notice that tangata whenua was standing there. And then tangata whenua got up and said, we're leaving this meeting. We've had a guts full of you people deciding that our land should be a park. And we're anti-mining, but we're leaving this meeting. So they walked. And I walked out with them because I was disgusted. And you know what happened? The kuia said to me, get your ass back in there and deal with your people. So I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to be a good girl that was like with the Māoris. And they were like, nah, you know your job. Get in there and do your job, Catherine. So I had to go back in there and do my job. And I've been trying to do that job ever since. And it's because I was instructed. I didn't think of it myself, but they told me. And it's like the people here, they're saying we're trying to rebuild our kaitiaki tanga. They've got a program for young people, young Māori who are in mana whenua to learn to be kaitiaki. And they said, look, it takes time. We're going slow because we're just getting a few resources together to do it. Could you, Pakeas, just back off? Just back off. And we will let you know when we're ready for this stuff to happen. So can your projects just be careful and not assume control of our islands, our whenua, our pests, whatever, you know, can you just back off a bit and wait for the relationship to give you and that's quite challenging, but it's possible. You know, I believe it's possible. I'm ready to back off. Positive relationship loops. Like one of the things that's been wonderful, just in the small amount of time we've had since last October when we started, has been around kai. So as I said in the introduction, we're all living on stolen land, and there's all these beautiful gardens and organic growers, and you know, amazing. We've got Karaka permaculture on Jeanette Fitzsimon's farm next door, and they're very treaty aware people. They're wonderful. But there's all these people. We all have this privilege of coming from other places and just like being able to buy land that was once stolen. And so we're all living in this little paradise, and people are growing great kai, and there's excess. So during COVID, I just personally, before the basket, started collecting from my neighbours to give to Te Wharaki or wahine or Hauraki, which is a women refuge from Hauraki, because they were distributing kai. And so we started just collecting kai, and people were very generous with their extra food, because it's just like they've got more than they need, and they live like, you know, live like kings actually on the best organic food here. So, you know, living like kings and queens, the least we could do was share the excess. So now we've got two, we've got the refuge doing that, but also the refuge who are leaders, because they know you can't stop violence until you can actually give people like shelter and food. They set up a pātaka shop in Pairoa, and we've also just opened with the kura at the local public school, which is the only one in our district, the only primary school that does anything about teaching in the reo or anything about Māori children properly. We've got a pātaka there, and the kaupapa is take what you need, give what you can. And it's giving really well, because it's like food banks, that's not where it's at. You know, talk about colonizing, you've got to have a message from winners to say that you're, oh, you know, I'm a poverty-stricken, desperate person, so here's my ticket. Food is a human right. And so give what you can, take what you need is really working for the shop in Pairoa. People are bringing in stuff and taking stuff. We've got supermarkets supporting, but we've also got, we're liberating all this privileged people's food that's excess, and we're sharing it with the pātaka. But we want to do more. And so with the kura, the school is led by some wonderful Māori principal, and she is really keen for the kids to learn to grow their own kai. So what we're doing is the kids are coming up to one of the organic growers here. We planted last spring, we planted with them pumpkins and potatoes. We harvested with them about 3 months ago. And now then we put it all in storage, and now we are dropping off the kai to the pātaka at the school and in Pairoa. So we've got lots of pumpkins. We've run out of potatoes, but we've got lots of pumpkins. And the kids learned all that, and it was their project. They produced it. You know, it isn't the concept of land back. It's still their land, and they don't have, you know, it's been privatized and stolen. But growing kai together is the beginning of the conversation about what can we do, about what can we make different, about what can we do about the concept of what could land back actually look like without dispossessing others. Because there are lots of ways of thinking about it, and one of them is through kai. So that's why we're doing environmental networking, we're doing treaty education for environment groups, where we're following the lead of tangata whenua, and we're doing these kai projects. And I know that you've all got a lot more going on because you're much more better established, and we don't even have a physical space. But it isn't, to me, an Enviro Hub is not a physical space. It's where you gather together to make stuff happen. And we might get one, but the most important thing is the relationships. Kia ora, like that's 10:25. Has anybody got any quick questions? That just gives you a picture of what we're trying to do. Or comments? Have I stunned you into a terrible silence?
Catherine, I just amazing kōrero, and thank you. I've had the opportunity to actually listen to you speak a few times now when I've joined into really big Zoom meetings that have been taking place across the motu. And the thing that I love so much is just how clearly the amount of passion, but it's the way that you just make everybody actually stop and think. And that's such a powerful thing, and that all of the things that you say can be applied to all of us, and they will in different ways, you know, in different ways. So I just wanted to say from me a really big thank you. It feels so much like you recenter me when I hear you talk. I go, oh yeah, it reminds you of all of the things that are deeply important. And I know for all of us, like you say, we're busy people, our minds start to go with all the operational stuff and all the exciting things we could do. But how do we come back to that really important centering and remind ourselves about what matters? And it is the relationships, and it is building those. So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Oh, tēnā koe e hoa. Kia ora. Thank you so much, Carla. And I do think one of the good things about the basket is we do make time for these conversations, which people often feel, oh, we're too busy doing, but I think it's a balance, you know, between, you know, we need to do stuff. It's action, reflection, because action without reflection is pointless. and reflection without action is pointless. So you have to find that you're working in the sweet spot. Anyone else want to make a comment or ask a part-time question?
I guess my question would be, what happens if there's not discussions or ongoing, you know, I'm not sure how much you know about Ngāti Power, but here we've got kind of two different entities, and they don't always agree, and so it feels a bit difficult to interact in a respectful way that doesn't potentially go against one of them, or you know, like you have to obviously you want to invite both the entities to collaborate or to help both the entities out, but sometimes that's not going, it's not easy. And I know that this isn't easy work, but is that something that there's a kind of insight that you could let us know about how to navigate that sort of situation?
I think, I mean, what you've described is just, you know, completely normal, because if you look at our culture, do we all work together nicely? Imagine what it's like trying to deal with us. We don't even have a name of our group, you know, like we don't even have it. Like we're just like this random, crazy. Yeah, it's really difficult working with us. I often reflect on how difficult it must be. I have been through what you've talked about. Like when I was working, particularly in the Bay of Plenty Mātāatua region, and there were 3 iwi, and the best advice I got was from my partner, Gordon, who had been working with them on the toxic river and the pulp mills for many years. And he said, you must never, ever take sides. You know, you work with everybody. So your respect must go to everybody. And that's easier said than done, I agree. But it is like, it's a starting point about our role in all of this, because so often I might be, you know, I might go to an event where there are people, like there's some people in our region, tangata whenua, who are pro-mining. And obviously I spent 40 years fighting the mining industry, but I will still pay respect to them as rangatira of Ngāti Maru or Ngāti Tamatara, whatever. Obviously, I don't build the same relationship personally with them because, well, I don't really want it. But it's okay. I'm still going to respect them, and I'm not going to badmouth them, and I'm not going to publicly challenge them. I'm not going to take court cases against them, and I'm not going to protest on Māori land. And so, Watchdog, we have a policy: we will never protest on Māori land, because no matter what they might be in favour of, some of those people, when you've had your economic base stolen, and when you're the privileged person, you're in no position, your culture's in no position to tell Māori how they should manage their whenua. But it does bring up all those contradictions. Tiffany, I really know what you're talking about. It's not simple. The only way is to find people who you can build relationships with, who can help you understand the dynamic and to show respect for it, because it's not our job to get in the middle of it. And that's the best learning I've ever had, is don't get in the middle of what's going on between them, because they'll sort it out. And at least they have cultural traditions and tikanga around how to do that. Whereas we just got everybody, every man or woman for themselves, every person for themselves. And so it's a really different scenario. So I just want to acknowledge what you're talking is very real. It's very complex, but it's actually very worthwhile, because it's a great opportunity to learn and to how we respect in a practical way. Obviously, we're more drawn to people who share values no matter what, like in an obvious way. But I think I would just warn us about making assumptions. And that's why we have to respect the tangata whenua are building their economic base within our system in ways that are potentially destructive to the environment. Who forced them into that box? And what is it that we who are wealthy, who are we to say you can't build your economic base within capitalism, because us environmentalists are, you know, we're pure and we can see that it doesn't work. So it's just about continuing having those conversations. But great question. It's just, you know, I'm there every day myself. So thank you for that, Partai. It's awesome. Anyone else? I know it's 10:32 and we're probably meant to stop. Janet.
Just a short comment about that, Livna, and I think there are some parallels with the climate action international movement with developing countries, you know, and requirements to cut our carbon emissions, and they're just getting an economic base and all of that equity discussion, which is quite interesting. And I think agreeing a process or agreeing a framework to work in is like your first step for getting safe ways to engage. And I was thinking, so Catherine, you probably know we're doing, as part of EHA, we're doing some Tiriti training courses to help hubs come up to date. And we've been talking about what happens after. So it's a 4 weeks course, you know, that's like the beginning of the conversation and laying out some of the basics. So maybe things like, how do we engage with our local mana whenua and tangata whenua could be some of the discussions. People could share their different approaches so that we can have some insights and think about how that might work.
That's
well.
awesome, Janet.
Yeah.
I reckon that would be great, because it's like there is no blueprint. Everyone's different. And also sometimes you have to accept that they don't want to engage with you because you're actually not the Crown. You know, they have a Te Tiriti agreement with the Crown. And so a small but vibrant enviro hub needs to find a way of building a relationship which is maybe not at that level, I mean, it might not be at the formal level, but other times, like Janet said, it might be. So, you know, that's about, as you grow as an organization, I think we just really need to help each other here and help each other with what our learnings are. Often it's just experiences that have taught you a particular thing. And I'd love to be part of a group that shared that regularly. We're trying to do that. I'm doing a workshop, you know, Go Eco, Joe Wrigley's group. I did it LI session with them, and what has resulted is that every staff meeting now, which is once a month one, I'm going to facilitate just a short conversation about what we call Te Tiriti moments, which is where people in their work find a dilemma like Lefni just gave us, and we discuss that dilemma and what it is that we need to do. And I really urge us to be uncomfortable. I know it's not part of Pākehā culture. You know, we really like being comfortable. It's different in America. It's different in other parts of the world. You know, I mean, some people are much more upfront, but we're I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this coming here, Heidi, but we're passive aggressive. We come from a deep English background, and we're passive aggressive. And so we don't really like saying what's going on. So I think helping each other by having these conversations and doing some listening would be a great outcome. I recognize it's 4 minutes past time, and Sandra's got a comment.
I was just reflecting on the story about being sent back in to speak to your own people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that, you know, when we're walking on this journey, the focus is often about how we relate to iwi or how we relate to Māori. But a good part of our work as allies and as Pākehā is actually about how we address our own people. And bring them on the journey, and there's, you know, there's an awful lot of rhetoric and attitude in our own backyard, which needs addressing.
Indeed, I love that. And it's like they talk about on the anti-racism stuff I'm involved, they talk about the uncle at the barbecue, which is a bit like when people's families aren't very supportive, and none of our families are. My brother wouldn't speak to me for 2 months because I was on Kim Hill talking about the racism in our family, which wasn't our generation, it was way back, but he just felt exposed, but he couldn't tell me. So he wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't discuss it. This is total passive aggressive. But, you know, that's my bro. He's talking to me now, but he doesn't want to go there, and you can't force people. But family's the hardest, and then there's your friends, and then there's your workplace. And I totally agree with Sandra that it's our responsibility to keep that focus as well as build those relationships. That's what Auntie Betty was meaning. Get back in there. That's where your work is. You know, and Annette Sykes, who's a great lawyer and Te Arawa lawyer, once said to me when I was in the Greens, sort the Greens out on the treaty. And I took that to heart, and I really tried. And that's why they've got a decent treaty policy, was because of Annette Sykes, you know, like telling me to do that work. And then I set up a group, and then we did it. But, you know, when I first joined the Greens, they had no mention of this in their stuff. It didn't exist. So, you know, you can make huge change by challenging your own people in ways that they can hear, and by educating yourself further. So stay strong, people. You know, keep addressing your own community, and keep, like, especially even where you see issues that Livni just raised, try to focus on the Pākehā people understanding rather than focusing on Māori and the solution, because it's not our business, but try to focus on getting everyone on your rōpū in your groups to understand the complexity of this. You know, it's not, and the damage being done means that we just need to do quite a bit of backing off, depending on what they want, depending on what they say. So thank you so much for the session. I found you all really, really lovely, reflective thinkers, and I really appreciated that you came because sometimes, like, you know, practical stuff's lovely. You know, we really want to do it. We want to do things and we need to do things, but we also need to reflect as well. So great contributions. I mean, I just want to wish you all well. And I just want to finish with a quote. The greatest citizen of this country I've ever met died just under a month ago. Dr. Moana Jackson, Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Kahungunu. I was privileged to be a friend of his. The loss is just, we lost the navigator in this space. As Justice Joe Williams called him, the navigator. Moana was the navigator. What we haven't lost is his amazing speeches, podcasts, and the learning that we can get from him. So I urge you to Google anything. The Ones for Gardeners is a great one. It's about how Māori were, have been labelled as a warrior culture, but actually are a gardening culture. Like we can feed ourselves from his legacy. But one of the greatest things that he said a number of things. One is treaties are not settled, they are honoured. And that's some of the work we have to do. He also said that people of goodwill, individuals of goodwill, will not change structural oppression, which is why this is a collective job for us, not about me being a good Pākehā ally. It's not about that. And the last thing that I want to quote is what he said about challenge. And he said, you know, from his point of view, courage or being brave is simply the deep breath that you take before starting something difficult. So let's all keep taking that deep breath together. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Have a great day. And I really hope that we do more stuff together in the future. Kia ora. Take care. And thank you very much, Jess, for holding us together, and EHA for what's been, you know, a lovely, I haven't been able to be there much this week, but it seems like lots of great things have happened. So go hard and be who you are in your own culture. Kia ora.